Hello again. This is part 4 of the discussion of Jehovah's Witnesses, a chapter in The American Religion by Harold Bloom, America's most famous literary critic. Bloom says, "Yet what a superb imaginative achievement they would be if they were American fiction rather than American fact. Even our most apocalyptic writers could not have conceived Russell, Rutherford, and their followers. If the entire movement had been created in the writings of Herman Melville or Nathaniel West or Thomas Pynchon, we would find no grander invention in those dark visionaries of our culture. Mark Twain was sincerely outraged by Mrs. Eddy's will denial of the reality of death," Mrs. Eddy being the founder of Christian Science. "Yet on a repressed level, she also may have outraged his inability to have created her, despite all his satiric gifts. What is humanly offensive about the doctrines of Jehovah's Witnesses in mere reality would be transformed utterly if they were edifying fictions. I will try out this formula by giving a plain paraphrase, as accurate as I can make it, of the witnesses' accounts of their favorite event, the Battle of Armageddon. What the wretched Saddam Hussein failed to give us, the mother of all battles, is promised to us by the witnesses. Nathan Knorr, the reigning theocrat at the 1953 Assembly of Witnesses at Yankee Stadium, said that Armageddon would be the worst event ever in the history of man. The relish of that assertion is palpable, and I would venture that the most characteristic quality of Jehovah's Witnesses in general is their group relish in contemplating the last things. Let us begin to explicate this relish by first examining its prime textual source, Revelation 16, 14-16, which tells us as little as possible about Armageddon. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth into the kingdoms of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." This slight foundation is the site for the witnesses' elaborate mythology of Armageddon, which they see as Jehovah's crucial battle against everything, supernatural and natural, that opposes him. The most distinguished literary account of a roughly parallel combat is John Milton's vision of war in heaven in Paradise Lost. All that Milton and the fiercely anti-intellectual, anti-literary sectarians have in common is the role of Jesus Christ as commander of Jehovah's legions against Satan's. Armageddon, for the witnesses, still has its curious link to World War I, since they see the first fighting between Christ and Satan as having taken place from 1914 through 1918. The second and decisive battle will be Armageddon, though even it will not be the last battle, and those slain in it will not be raised up again in the millennium. But the witnesses, both elect and Jonadabs, are promised that they will not die at Armageddon. As for Armageddon itself, the conflict will not be between America and Russia, or America and Iraq, nor will it be a general worldwide nuclear confrontation. Rather, all nations, since all are Satan's, will fight against the witnesses everywhere, sometime soon, but charmingly unspecified. In 1952, the witnesses stated that it would be within a generation, and in 1958 they insisted that many alive in 1914 would still be alive at Armageddon. Since that was 77 years ago, as I write, Armageddon cannot be much longer delayed. Whenever, we will stand at Armageddon, which will be where you are, wherever you are. What will we see? If we are the witnesses, or New Israel, we will be greatly outnumbered. A few thousand still here of the mystical 144,000, and a couple of million sheepish Jonadabs standing up to the United Nations, all the false religions of the world, and billions of goats, mostly human ones. But it does not matter that we are so few, because we will not fight anyway. Christ and invisible armies will fight for us, assisted by Jehovah's full arsenal. Forest fires, floods, avalanches, earthquakes, hailstorms, great winds, and terrible plagues. Against this, Satan and the United Nations, including the American Armed forces will have only a poor, if rather sublimely anachronistic blend of spears and hydrogen bombs, poison gas, and bows and arrows. But whether the goats are skewered or burned alive, well over 2 billion will be slain, including all intellectuals whatsoever. Still, the survivors, saints and Jonadabs alike, will be given a grisly task in the aftermath of the slaughter. They must gather up the bones of all the dead, and then beat a few swords into plowshares for use in the millennium. As for Satan and his principal devils, they will survive the carnage, but they will be thrown by Christ into a convenient abyss, a place of non-being, where they will abide passively until they are needed again to torment and test Jonadabs. In the restored earth of the millennium, no one will die anymore, and the last judgment will be based not upon anything good or bad done in this life, the here and now, but only upon what one does in the millennium. Satan's last battle will be his temptation of everyone at the end of the millennium. Those who follow him will be consigned by Jehovah to a great lake of burning sulfur, where they will be annihilated forever with Satan. But Jehovah's obedient ones will remain forever upon a perpetually paradisal earth. And so the story is told by the disciples of Russell and Rutherford comes to its close. I've omitted a mass of details, but they do little to alter this pattern. What can most of us do with such a narrative? Lurid and cruel, it contrasts poorly with the apocalyptic elements in early Mormonism, or even with the eschatological longings of Seventh-day Adventism. Though there are a number of rather savage apocalyptic scenarios current among American fundamentalists, I am aware of none quite so inhumane as the Jehovah's Witnesses' accounts of the end of our time. There's something peculiarly childish in these Watchtower yearnings. They remind me of why very small children cannot be left alone with wounded and suffering household pets. And that's the last note of his chapter on Jehovah's Witnesses. But can we expect good fruit from an evil root? Have Jehovah's Witnesses ever been God's organization? I've linked to the first of that playlist and then the playlist itself.